Hello and welcome to Experiential Learning Lesson 28. In this lesson, we're going to be addressing written communication at work, sentence construction, and grammar tools. My name is Eloise from Durban campus. In this lesson, you will be introduced to constructing a cohesive and coherent paragraph. You'll understand how to construct a cohesive and coherent paragraph, understand the importance of acknowledging sources properly, and structure a cohesive and coherent paragraph on a relevant topic. So as a recap of the last lesson, what are the key points that you remember from our previous lesson about writing persuasive paragraphs, jargon, and South African English? This lesson addresses content which is contained in your working professionalism book on pages 229 to 239 in chapter 6. So a well-constructed paragraph is about one particular idea. The sentences within the paragraph should flow logically from one to another. Individual sentences need to be clear and a reasonable length, not long and rambling. Each paragraph should logically build on the previous paragraph to create a coherent document. Connect the ideas between sentences and paragraphs with linking words and phrases, which you will find on Table 6.14 in your textbook. Before we proceed, please watch these videos on YouTube. I will link them in the description. Video number 1 is just 5 minutes and 45 seconds long. Paragraph writing in English, paragraph unity and coherence. The second video is only 3 minutes long, coherence in paragraphs. Pause this video, open them up in a new tab, and then come right back. In the previous lesson, you wrote a persuasive paragraph on the topic, the future of education is online, or taking the stance the future of education is face-to-face. I'd like you to look at that draft that you wrote, and now knowing what you know about a coherent paragraph, turn it into a more formal piece of writing. You can do this as we work through the content. In a longer piece of writing, each paragraph needs a topic sentence which indicates what that paragraph is about. This is so that the reader immediately knows what the main point of what they're about to read is. This will help them skim to find the correct paragraph when reading your document. It's also important to do this so that you stay focused on one idea in one paragraph. If you find yourself addressing something which is not in the topic sentence, then maybe you should hit enter and start a new paragraph with that new idea. So for instance, if you are writing a convincing, persuasive piece of writing, trying to get somebody to register for a tertiary course at Boston Media House, your first paragraph could have the topic sentence, many jobs require a minimum level of qualification for an application to be accepted. After you've written that topic sentence, you would substantiate that claim using evidence. So you could say, in a survey of this many job ads in the media industry, this many required a minimum level of tertiary education, just for the application to be accepted. Paragraph 2 might start with the idea, while you may not be certain where your future career will go, getting a tertiary education in any form will be helpful. And then you would substantiate that in your paragraph by explaining the types of skills that you learn in tertiary education which are not taught in high school education. Things like how to reference your work and how professional skills and critical thinking and basically doing things without the support of an educator but taking initiative, things like that. Paragraph 3 might start with the idea that once you've earned a diploma, you can build on your credits to upgrade to a degree at a later stage. And this would be convincing to somebody who says, oh, but I didn't qualify for a degree, why bother? Because a diploma can always be upgraded. So it's better than nothing. If you think it's a degree or nothing, then you're wrong, and substantiate that. So each of these topic sentences should be followed by a few sentences which substantiate the point with evidence. The topic sentence should connect the idea of the paragraph with the main argument of that text. Now let's talk about the process of constructing a very convincing and well-researched, well-written text. Before you begin writing, you need to plan what will be covered. The first step is to brainstorm. This can involve collaboration and research to gain the most from the people and resources that you have access to. Ensure that you use recent and relevant sources for research. Create a culture of trust and drive to gain value from the participants in a team brainstorming session. So what that means is if you are working with a team to create a piece of writing, be it a report or a proposal or a request, then if your group trusts you and they feel comfortable contributing ideas, you're going to get better value from them than if they feel demotivated, detached, disengaged, mistrusted, or overly criticized. A brainstorming session needs structure, and ideas produced need to be recorded for future reference. So I just mentioned a brainstorming session needs structure, and this is an example of the kind of structure that it can have. You could request that everybody in the team submits ideas to one person. The ideas are collected and evaluated at a later stage. Alternatively, each person shares their idea with the group, and the idea is built on during the same session. So you make a suggestion and other people say how it can be developed further into a real helpful contribution. You could also take the approach of mind mapping ideas onto a shared page or board. The central problem to be solved is usually written in the center of a mind map, and the ideas related to that problem are sprouting off it with arms. There's a little illustration of a mind map on the right there. You could also take the approach of having smaller groups do brainstorming sessions before joining together and sharing the ideas to prevent a large group where some people feel like they can sit silently and not contribute. Once you've generated and recorded all of the ideas, you need to organize them. You could use many different systems to organize the ideas, and here are just a few ideas. They could be organized by priority or chronology, so which one takes place sooner, the time. Similarity, so grouping ideas that are similar to each other. You could contrast ideas, so if two ideas are very different from each other, you can group them together and use that contrast to help you develop each of them further or choose which one of them is the most valuable. Then you can group them by cause and effect. You can also group them by the level of evidence or expert support that each idea has. Take your time with the evaluation process. Make sure that the ideas you choose to use are relevant and helpful for the issue at hand. For writing at a university level or a college level, you're most likely to be doing this process by yourself rather than with a group. So again, just because you're by yourself doesn't mean that you should bypass this process or skip doing research or evaluating ideas. Don't assume that all of your ideas are good. Come up with a lot of them and then choose the best ones. That's how creativity and problem solving work. So now you know which ideas are to be addressed in your piece of writing, and you've done research to support those ideas. Now you're ready to write your first draft, which includes an introduction and a conclusion. You can write the introduction and conclusion later. First, think about your audience. What is the goal or objective of the text? Are your sources credited? Does it make sense when you read your draft out loud? Once you've written the body paragraphs, each of them containing a topic sentence, the very first sentence of each paragraph, then you can write an introduction, which explains the point that you're about to make, and a conclusion, which summarizes all of the support for that point. The first draft is not the version that you are going to submit to whoever is going to read it. You need to edit the first draft. If you leave mistakes or if it doesn't make sense, you're not going to get the outcome that you want. In fact, you risk being perceived as sloppy or incompetent if there are lots of errors in the version that you share. Before editing, take some time away from the document. If it is too familiar with you, it'll be difficult to edit. Check the document's structure and references. When you read over your document, have you expressed your points clearly? If not, rewrite until it is clear. Correct all spelling and grammar errors, and use other tools like Grammarly to assist you if you struggle with spelling and grammar in English. Check capitalization and font consistency. So by that I mean, if you have capitalized a particular word at the beginning of your piece of writing, make sure it is capitalized in every use. If you have used a particular font for your paragraphs or for your headings, make sure that the font is the same throughout. Just like your spacing and alignment, are the gaps between your paragraphs the same size every time? Are they weird white spaces that aren't consistent throughout the document? Fix all of these things before moving on to the next step. And now you move on to the final draft. This is where you refine and enhance your text. Sometimes the editing process can introduce errors which you need to fix before finalizing the document. This used to happen to me a lot. You end up rearranging your sentences and then they don't quite make sense. So to make sure that you haven't introduced any errors, read through the entire document again and read through it out loud. You're checking for coherence and consistency. Does the information flow in a way that makes sense? Sort out any lingering spelling, punctuation, or grammar errors. Punctuation means, does every sentence end with a full stop? If you include bullet points, are they consistent? For instance, in this set of bullet points, do they all have full stops? Do some of them have full stops? Because if some of them do, all of them should, or none of them. So punctuation errors could also be things like the quotation marks should always have a space, then an opening quotation mark, then the quote, then the closing quotation mark. There should always be a space before an opening bracket and a space after a closing bracket. You should never have a space before a closing bracket. Things like that. I know you might think that it doesn't really matter, but it makes your work look polished and it will make you look like you know what you're doing. So people will take your ideas seriously if they're packaged in a way that is polished. Resolve any content queries discovered in the editing process. So if there's anything that doesn't make sense, or ideas that don't flow, or any points that are unsubstantiated, so any claims that don't really have any support, make sure that that content is queried. So if you cannot find support for a particular point, remove the point and make sure that the argument still makes sense without it, or find evidence to support it. Finalize your formatting. Have you chosen exactly what font and font size and spacing to use? Make sure that it is consistent throughout. Compare your citations, that's your in-text references, with your bibliography to ensure that they are correct and consistent. Put the document aside for a while until you give it a final edit. Woohoo! At this point, you're almost ready to go. You're editing the final draft. Read the text out loud. Does it sound good? Do the ideas make sense and flow logically into each other? Do the words make sense together? Check for words which may be spelled correctly, but are the wrong word, such as with transposing letters, turning the word angle into angel. Check that headings and subheadings are consistently formatted. After all of this, your document should be ready for its audience. So throughout hearing all of that discussion about the theory of writing and the process of coming up with ideas and planning your writing and editing your writing, you should have been able to finish writing your coherent, persuasive paragraph. Read it out loud, and your lecturer and classmates will assess how well it is written. But we're not done yet. We're also going to discuss acknowledging your sources. The most important thing is to remember why you are acknowledging your sources. A very important reason is to give expert power and support to the points that you're making in your writing. If you are one person who makes a claim, but I don't know who you are or what your qualifications are, I am not necessarily going to take it seriously. But if you can quote an expert or research that has been published to support your point, then I'm going to take it much more seriously and find it convincing. You're also there to give full credit to the owner of the intellectual property. Not doing so is plagiarism, and plagiarism has consequences. You also give people references so that the reader can find out more about the information you've cited. So for instance, if you are writing about online versus face-to-face education, and you found research about the success of online education, whoever's reading your persuasive piece of writing might be really interested to read more about that study. And if you've referenced it correctly, they can find that information. And that is a good sign because it means that you've been persuasive and they are engaged in what you've said. So you can find supportive information for your work in books, academic journals, newspapers, magazines, informational brochures, documentaries, websites, even online discussion forums or personal interviews, surveys, diagrams, and charts. Each of those are sources that need to be referenced in a specific way. Use a consistent referencing system. Boston Media House uses the Harvard system. You can learn more about it via this link, or just use any kind of guide to make sure that your referencing system is consistent. So just the basics are in-text referencing should have, before the end of your sentence, an opening bracket, the surname of the author of the work, a comma, a space, the year that the work was published, and if there is a page number, then a colon and that page number. If not, a closing bracket followed by a full stop to end the sentence. So your in-text citation happens before the end of the sentence. It does not include any of the author's initials or first names. It is only the author's surname. It does not need the name of the website, only the author's name and the date of publishing. To find out more, click on that link, as I said. I'll put it in the description. In the next lesson, we'll continue to explore the concept of written communication by focusing on specific forms of written communication in the workplace. Adios and have a fantastic break. I hope you all have an excellent time away from campus, that you are safe, that you work hard on your assignments, and that you're proud of the work that you hand in. Bye! And here is my reference, because it's very important to acknowledge your sources. Ahem.